I am Chet Tabor. I'm the drummer for them guys.
All right. And we're in St. James Parish right now. What township is this?
So technically right here, we're in St. James. It's the town is called Welcome, like a block up, but it's St. James,
Okay.
Louisiana is the town. We're right outside of Vacherie.
Right outside of Vacherie. Were you born here?
No.
Where were you born?
So I'm actually from Choctaw, right outside of Thibodeaux.
Okay.
I lived there for 33 years.
Wow,
And
okay.
I've been here for 3.
All right. What was the cause for the move from 1 to 2?
So I work right here by the Sunshine Bridge, and we were in the process. We just went through Hurricane Ida, and there was a lot of damages down there, and we came across this house. We couldn't pass it up. It was just a beautiful place, and got me a lot closer to work, a lot less travel time, and so it was kind of we went from a double wide trailer to a brick home.
Yeah.
We went from 40-minute drive to work to 7-minute drive to work.
Okay.
So it made a huge difference.
Yeah, yeah. Choctaw was, I don't know the first thing about Choctaw, to be honest. Like, I don't know if I've ever been there. What is it like?
So it's a one road in, one road out type town. It's actually really well known for the school district. The school district is great, but that's about it. It's kind of a dying town, to be honest. I hate to say that because all of my family lives there.
Right.
But growing up there, knowing that we had a ton of things to do when we were kids, and now going back there and seeing people are not there, the older generation's dying off. It's kind of it's a sad thing to see, but it is still a nice little quaint community. It's a small, tight-knit community, very, very peaceful, very quiet, not a whole lot of traffic, and there's actually 2 ways in, 2 ways out.
Gotcha.
But it's 8 miles long.
Yeah. Well, you speak of it. Finally, was it nice to grow up in as a child? I mean, sometimes kids don't necessarily appreciate the isolation and things. You know what I'm saying?
It was definitely an experience growing up. The biggest challenge in growing up in a town like that is you've only got so many kids that are the same age. So our graduating class in Thibodeaux had 200, but in our little city we had 3 or 4 at my age.
Wow.
So we hung out with 10-year-old, 10 years older to 10 years younger than you. You had a 20-year age gap of the people hanging out. There were, you needed that age range to play a game of pickup football.
Right.
Like you couldn't have enough players.
Couldn't be picky.
Yeah, so it was, the biggest challenge was having friends. I mean, and you may be 4 or 5 miles up the road. It wasn't, hey, we can go walk next door and hang out. You may have to ride a bicycle for an hour to try to get somewhere to go hang out with a friend.
Yeah.
So it was a known thing for us when we were kids. Everybody would sleep over at each other's house. We'd spend 5-6 days at a time. It wasn't just hey, I'm going to come visit on Saturday. We were far enough apart from all the kids where you kind of had no choice but to do that.
Yeah.
And it worked out, though. I mean, everybody knew everybody. Everybody's related for the most part.
Right.
So it worked out well. It just, like I said, it had its challenges, but nothing major.
So the age range kind of interests me because if you were hanging around older kids, I'm assuming that might have been maybe your first introduction to music or someone's music collection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So my older brother is 6 years older than me, and 2 of his best friends were 4 and 6 years older than him. So I was at the crisp age of 7, 8 years old, hanging out with my 14-year-old brother who's hanging out with his 19, 20-year-old friends that he grew up with.
Yeah.
And, so I was, at 6, 7 years old, I was introduced to, the Soundgardens, the Pearl Jams, a lot of the stuff from back in the early 90s that, as a 6-year-old, what would have been the odds of me hearing that? It's slim to none.
No, yeah.
But that age gap played a big role into me getting introduced to a lot of stuff at an early age.
Yeah. So, and you're at these people's houses for a length of time. So, I mean, you're in the atmosphere of, let's say, the older kid's room or something. So you might have seen posters and you saw so you're looking at the CDs and you're looking at the liner notes and all of these things. That's cool, man. Yeah, you soaked in a lot at once. You know?
That's for sure.
Is that did they make you want to think those things were cool because you thought they were cool? Do you know what I mean? You kind of emulate the older kid.
Well, I would say that, but I'm definitely the heavier version of my brother. So my older brother was more of he liked a little bit of the gangster rap, he liked a little bit of the more popular music, but when it came to rock and metal, he was more of a Metallica, and that was about it. Metallica, into like Stone Temple Pilots, a little bit of that, and some Guns N' Roses. I, on the other hand, the first time I heard Ode by Creed, I'm 9 years old, 10 years old, and it's like, holy shit. Yeah. Like, this is a killer riff. And, to me, even though Creed wasn't that heavy, back then when you're 10 years old, I mean, that's crazy. It was insane.
Yeah.
And I say 10, I may have been a little older than that. But, I mean, I was introduced. My dad was a musician when he played music till I was 5 or 6, and my dad always listened to, like, Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and Lynyrd Skynyrd. My dad was a huge Skynyrd fan.
Yeah.
And, all these bands were so far ahead of their time, it just carried through. 30 years later, he's raising me, and here I am listening to this stuff with him. And so my brother he didn't contribute as much to the style of music I like. I took on to a lot of it from hearing a lot of it from my dad and hearing all the music and enjoying it.
Yeah.
When I started hearing some of the newer stuff, some of the grunge music, some of the, what progressed into heavy metal, which would have been death metal back in 1975, you get to some of this newer music, I would call like a progressive metal. That was just something that from Jump Street I loved. It was, I look at like the Godsmacks, the Disturbs, Nonpoint, obviously. If you look at my walls, I'm a huge Nonpoint fan. I love Seven Dust. And back then, when I was, early teens, those bands were starting to break into the scene, and they were great. I mean, I loved them instantly.
Yeah.
It wasn't a conditioning. It was something that, as soon as I heard them, it's like, holy shit, man, these guys are incredible.
Hearing them for the first time as a teenager, I'm guessing you were able to make the distinction as to how they differed from, it was like the old guard, you know what I'm saying? Like, you could tell what your dad was listening to didn't sound like this, and this was something new.
Oh, that's
Did it feel like something that was your own? Do you know what I mean? Because at that age, we tend to adopt what is coming out as we are coming of age. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, it was obvious. I had a quite a large gap, so I didn't get a whole lot of '80s music in my lifetime. My dad was my dad's a '50s baby, so my dad's listening to the '70s music, very early '80s. When I went from listening to music with my dad to listening to music with my brother, which was mid '90s, early '90s, gone into early 2000s, and it was more of so I missed a lot of the '80s, and so I feel like it was a weird transition between the two, because you missed an entire era of music.
Yeah,
that transition from one to the next was, I missed a whole gap. Mm-hmm. And it's like, man, now don't get me wrong, later in my life I discovered the Motley Crues and Poisons and stuff like that, but going from Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and Ozzy to Creed, going to Soundgarden, Stone Temple Pilots, it was just a huge transition.
Right.
But I honestly feel like that was one of the things. It was a weird transition, but at the same time, it gave me a different appreciation of music, because I got to see it almost immediately, the difference in music from the '70s to the '90s.
Sure.
I didn't have to hear the '80s to hear the difference from the '70s to the '90s.
What did your dad think about it?
So my dad's still a '70s head. My dad loves the older music. My dad is also one of the largest supporters of what we do. So he reathers the older music, but he respects it.
Sure.
Let's put it that way. My dad'll be one. I mean, my dad's in the picture on the wall right here at one of our concerts we put on. He's a huge supporter of it, and he enjoys it.
Yeah.
But my dad's 72 years old now, so he's not out there head banging and jamming like we would be, but he respects it. He really does.
I can't see how somebody couldn't, to be honest. I mean, there was such musicianship, even though it was a different sound. It was still undeniable talent. Do you know what
absolutely.
I mean? Like, you can't deny that. So, when did you start getting involved in music yourself?
So I started playing. I actually ended up playing tuba in school band when I was in third, fourth grade. And funny story, I tried out for drums and I made it, but the music teacher said, "No, we've got enough drummers. We need somebody to play one of these other instruments." My older brother played tuba, so I kind of knew the bass line of it. I ended up playing tuba for, 6, 7 years. I was first chair in the state and honor band on tuba.
Nice.
I actually kind of started learning the drums at the age of 10. A friend of mine, Josh Sanchez, he taught me how to play the drums. The first song I ever learned was Kid Rock, Only God Knows Why.
Okay.
As funny as it is, it had this little offbeat hi-hat to your kick drum, and it teaches you to separate it. Mm-hmm. And that's 26 years ago. I learned that song, and by the age of 14, I was writing music with a friend of ours from Vacherie. Well, I say a friend of ours. He hates us. But Jordan Trigg. I was writing music at 14 years old with him in Vacherie. And I actually stepped away because trying to play live music back then, when you're 14, 15 years old, it's tough. I mean, you need your parents to be present, or you need your parents to sign off with this for insurance.
Sure.
I'm just young enough to have where that age gap, where the 21 years of age to get into a venue was the things, and they were starting to crack down with DWIs and all this. So it was getting in a venue wasn't just walking the door, even though I could. So when we went through that, I kind of started off with them. We started writing music and trying to perform, and it was like, man, it was just too much. I was too young. So I stepped away. And my first venture into music, performing-wise, full-time, was the band called Hate for Nothing.
Okay.
Back in 2000 and, I'm going to say 2006 or 2007, we wrote an album. We never named the album, actually, but we had an album's worth of music, and we did a recording with an old-school rock band microphone in the middle of a room, hooked up to a laptop and mixed on Reaper. And that lasted for a little while. And then eventually I ended up meeting, jumping over back with Jordan, was my original first endeavor. And we ended up doing cover music more than anything because the original scene was tough.
Yeah.
So we were doing kind of a mix of the two. And I played one show with him as a fill-in, and he called me and asked me to stay. And the very next show we played, we introduced my current bass player, John Wagaspack, into the band with us as our bass player. And that lasted like 6-7 years. I mean, we ran weekends after weekends after weekends, year-round, for probably 6-7 years. And in the middle of all of that, Hate for Nothing kind of died off. We had some personnel issues, people just kind of falling off, people don't have their shit together.
What were you doing in the band Hate for Nothing?
Drumming.
And then what about this band you're talking now?
Drumming.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've only ever played drums.
Okay. And the music that you were writing, I'm trying to understand the relationship there. Like, you writing parts for everybody, or?
No, so back then Jordan would write his guitar parts. I would match his guitar with my drums. We'd piece together a composition, and then from there Jordan would strategically write out the bass line, and then the guy we ended up hooking up with would start writing his own vocals, and then we'd piece it all together and kind of millwork it.
Okay.
It was a kind of awkward situation because, compared to what we do now with them guys, it's night and day difference.
Sure.
We have our own parts in everything we do with them guys. Back then, Jordan was the ringleader. So it was what Jordan says goes. It didn't matter how anybody felt about it. It was his baby.
Did it really matter that much, though? Because, you were just kind of getting your start.
Yeah, I would say that it didn't matter, but, 10 years later, here I find myself playing the songs we wrote 10 years earlier live, in these cover shows. We'd still play 6 or 7 of the originals. And it did have some effect, but it wasn't as important as, like what we're doing now, where we put as much effort as we do.
Yeah.
I felt like he needed that back in that time frame. I feel like, where he was as a musician, it was very important to him to have that full reign of control, and it meant the world. It meant way more to him doing it back then than it would to me. Versus today, what we do, night and day difference. We all take a big pride in what we contribute to our music.
Sure. Like
it's a group effort across the board, and we take a lot of pride in that.
So you didn't mind it so much back then, but looking back, you feel like it's not.
No, I was a kid.
Plus.
Man, I was a kid. The advantage to it was I had free reign to do what I wanted to do feel-wise on the drums.
Yeah.
And I've always been a kind of non-traditional drummer. Like I'm not the 1-2 beat Lars Ulrich, kind of guy. I'm more of a freelance. I get a lot of hip-hop influence. My brother he listened to hip-hop, so I listened to a lot of hip-hop with him. I take a lot of influence from that. So he gave me free range to basically play where my comfort zone was.
Sure.
Now, he doctored it up after the fact and said, look, I want this from you, I want that. But I had free range to do where I was comfortable, and then we took my comfort zone and adapted it. So I did have, it was a good experience. It wasn't a bad experience. It wasn't the same experience as what we experience now.
Yeah.
Like today's world, it's, you know, we do things a lot different than what we did back then.
What did you cut your teeth on with that band as far as experiences? Was this, because that's the first band you performed with?
That was the second band
public?
I performed with.
The first band I thought you didn't, you performed with the first band, but you didn't put out the material.
Yeah, we never put out the material.
Okay.
So we recorded it and we never put it out.
Gotcha.
On the first band.
But you did perform live with that band?
Yes. So I think we played like 8 or 9 shows.
Okay.
You know, without getting into too much detail, I mean, I had a guitar player that was in and out of jail. I had a singer that had some substance abuse issues.
Yeah.
And, you know, you couldn't really count on them. And then I had a bass player that ended up moving to St. Thomas, running from the law. So, you know, it was destined for failure at that point. It was great. It was really good music, but it was destined for failure.
Sure.
Like I've actually, one of my cousins was a guitar player for us at one time, and he reached out to me about 3 months ago asking me if I would record one of the songs just for him to have a good, high quality recording today of what we did, you know, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you know, we can do that. I would do that for 1 or 2 songs. I wouldn't even have the interest to go back to do that much of it just based on what we have today. Night and day difference.
Sure, yeah. That's funny, though. I was trying to think. I mean, me at that age, I didn't have any sense of normalcy or there was nothing steady or reliable in my life, so I can't imagine 4 guys trying to get together and, I don't know. I think that's how a lot of bands start off. And maybe die, or maybe some, you know, pull through, but, I mean, it's probably everybody's story at one point in time or another.
I would imagine so. It's not easy.
Yeah. And the drugs and alcohol thing. I was talking to a guy, Steve Staples, the Iceman Special, and he had a substance abuse problem, and it got bad, like needles and stuff, and he ends up going to rehab for it. And, you know, I asked him afterwards, I was like, did music make it hard for you to remain sober after the fact? Because you think about the places where you playing in bars. Think about the people that come around to watch your shows. You know, some of them are, you know, smoking out before they come in and all this other things. It's like constantly around you. And I can't imagine trying to maintain sobriety, but still going to the places where people go to not be sober. Do you know what I mean? Right. So, like, I get what you're saying about revisiting your past. It might not be that deep, you know what I'm saying? But revisiting the past with the old works and the old people and all of that stuff, it's just sometimes you don't want to look back, you know?
Well, you know, I was fortunate enough in that early situation. You know, I was underage. I was still going out, and yes, I was addicted to drugs, but, you know, it wasn't on the scale of being a grown man with, you know, kids at home, losing your house.
Yeah.
I mean, I was still in a party phase of my life.
Right.
You know, I'm 36 years old now. I stopped my major party phase at 21, 22 years old.
Good for you.
So, trust me, I got enough of it out of my system from 14 to 22.
Yeah.
I didn't need it anymore.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was one of those things. I mean, you know, when you're a kid, and that's what I was a kid. You know, you don't realize what's going on in the moment. Some things that felt better could have felt better than what they really were.
Sure.
Know? And looking back on a lot of those situations, I don't regret the time. But I can honestly say that it's not something that if I had to do it today, I would, you know, don't line me up at the door waiting to do it. No, I'm good. I'm completely content with where I am now. That is not even a scratch the surface.
Yeah.
Like, we're not even thinking of that.
Let me ask, man. I mean, you explained it like a one-horse town. You had to be covering some ground to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And you're an early teen. I mean, somebody's got a license and they're carting you around and all.
Yeah. So back then, well, my parents live in the back of Choctaw, and they've got 4.5 acres of land. Had a big shop, and I was actually going to vocational school with Jordan at 14 years old, and he would come from school. He'd bring he had a Marshall cab with a Marshall head. He'd bring it to my mom and dad's house, and we'd set up in my mom and dad's shed, and we'd jam there. And then once we started. So we didn't actually start performing regularly with them until well after Hate for Nothing. But, you know, when we started performing, it was, he had to drive everywhere. I didn't get a driver's license until I was 17.
Yeah.
So I mean, he drove everywhere. It was an interesting situation. We didn't do a whole lot. We made a couple attempts, and with the age, my age gap, I'll call it, it was a challenge.
Yeah.
So we just kind of said, you know what, we just gonna kind of cut this short right here. Once we moved into Hate for Nothing, it was the same situation but opposite, where I was the only person in the band that had a car. So I had a truck, I got a trailer with equipment, I've got all the equipment, and I'm the only person that has a way to get to where we're going to play. I had to go ride to this one's house, pick him up, pick his stuff up, go ride to this one's house. So a 30-minute down the road show was a 3.5 hour extravaganza to get there. It was insane. And that's challenging. It really is.
It's commitment, bro.
It is. You got to like it. Yeah. If you don't like it, you're not going to do it.
The unreleased material, what was there a falling out back then? I kind of no. I
mean, we released quite a bit of material with Hate for Nothing, and it's actually quite good. Back then, I mean, we talking early 2000s, 2006 maybe, 2007.
Yeah, this is something that they can go find.
You can find a little bit. There's a couple videos on YouTube, and you search Hate for Nothing with the number 4, and there's a song called Barricade and a song called, I don't remember. That's how long it's been.
Yeah.
But there's 2 songs. One is Barricade for sure.
Okay.
But you can find those 2 videos on YouTube, and funny story, they were recorded on a digital camera, the old school digital camera, video and audio. So it's horrendous, by the way. It is trash.
Yeah. It's a beautiful time capsule.
Right. That's exactly what it is, because it's absolutely horrendous.
Yeah.
But it does highlight a little bit of where the music was trying to go. And it was good. It was, we had some local bands from back in that day that were doing cover music that would grab onto us as original and say, look, we want you to play. And their fan base would just levitate towards us. It was really good. It just, the situation wasn't good.
Sure.
It just wasn't practical.
The things that you're talking about that weren't good or weren't practical, I'm trying to get to what contributed to not having stuff waiting but not releasing it.
Well, I think one, it was financial. Financial was a problem. We didn't have any kind of access to good equipment to get music recorded.
Okay, so it was like logistics. It wasn't like...
Well, logistics started it, and then when logistics, if anybody knows anything about the music business, when money becomes a problem, everything follows.
Yeah.
So the second you prioritize money over the love, it becomes a huge problem across the board, and that's what happened. We're arguing and fighting over where the money's going to come from to try to do this EP or this LP, whatever we're going to do.
Sure.
And next thing you know, it's, well, I'm hauling the trailer. Well, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And
right.
It's a falling out. And in the process of doing that, you're arguing with guys that are in and out of jail.
Yeah.
So you're saying, hey, we're going to plan to do this next Thursday, and they get arrested on Sunday. Like, it didn't work out well. But once the finances became an issue, and that had a lot to do with me because I put my foot down. I was the only person working. I was funding the party. I mean, I'd fill my refrigerator up with beer for days. I mean, I funded everything.
Yeah.
So when I put my foot down and said, look, I'm not going to continue to pay for everything, it became a problem.
Yeah.
A big problem.
Yeah.
And I mean, like you say, you live and you learn.
Yeah.
I was, at that time when we were doing Hate for Nothing, I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
So I mean, I didn't know no better.
Yeah. So you get out of it, and what do you begin to do?
So I transitioned straight from Hate for Nothing into it was called Super Nutra. It was the cover band.
Super Nutra?
Super Nutra.
Okay.
So prior to that, the band was called Intoxination. And when Jordan and I started writing music back when I was 14, that's what the goal was, Intoxination. Well, I left, went do Hate for Nothing, all that for years. We joined Super Nutra doing cover music. So at that transition, it was actually kind of accidental. I was still doing Hate for Nothing, and I get a call from Jordan to go play as a fill-in that the drummer couldn't make it. Funny story, the drummer that couldn't make it is now my lead singer in them guys. So it's
what year are we talking right now where you're at?
Oh, Lord. I'm going to say 2009.
Okay.
Probably 2009, 2010 maybe.
All right.
May have been a little bit earlier than that. But yeah, so Nick, our lead singer in them guys, was the drummer for Super Nutra back then.
Gotcha.
And he couldn't play a show, so Jordan calls me to fill in. I fill in, and the original bass player was his last show. He's like, look, we can't get commitment, so he was quitting. we played the one show, and then we called John. I want to say we tried him out, but I guess that's what it was. We gave him a rehearsal to come in and, this is what we're looking to do. This is what we want to do. Jordan kind of grabbed John, put him under his wing, helped him learn some of the bass line of what we were doing. I mean, he was playing Geezer Butler and, just a different animal of music. Mm-hmm. And within 3-4 months, we were back full force, let's go. And we were doing 4-hour sets for, 6 years, 7 years?
That had to be like coasting compared to all the other shit that you went through before you got there, because you were writing music, you were carting people around, you were paying for stuff.
It was.
And there was turmoil within the bands, and now you don't have to write music, you don't have to pay for anybody's shit.
So it was easier. But that's where it became an issue. It was basically the same situation eventually, logistically. But musically, it was much easier. You know what I mean? When you go from writing and recording to, hey, let me listen to the song a few times, I can play it.
Yeah.
The musical side of things was much easier. But again, Jordan plays music at the church. That's his income. So he doesn't have a good, he don't have a 9-to-5. He doesn't have a $100,000 a year job. Neil lived and worked in Baton Rouge. And John, me and John were pretty much the baseline of it. We were coming up with all the money. It was our idea to come up with merch. We didn't have merch. We did that. We paid to fix a sign, make a brand new sign. We paid for all the traveling back and forth. Yeah. We paid for everything. And eventually it was, okay, Jordan, you want to be that guy that is in control. You need to step up to the plate. Yeah. And he just couldn't. I guess, I don't know if it was overwhelming or if it was just, it wasn't really what he wanted to do. But, over time, he'd stop showing up to rehearsals at his house. Yeah. We'd all meet up at his house. He's not there. He wasn't putting anything into it. And finally, it was like, you know what? This is enough of this. Like,
how far along is this band before you step in it? How long had it been playing, I should say?
I will say probably 3 years, 3 or 4 years. They had been running kind of consistent. And then after I joined, I want to say we ran for about 7. So, it had a pretty good established name. I can't say it was known for the originals. We did play some originals with it.
And you did?
It was good. But it was, like I said, it was stuff we wrote back when I was 14 years old. So it wasn't a, hey, we got to go sit down and write. It was, hey, why don't you recoup what you had, 6-7 years ago, and let's move on.
So and the promo and the merch was basically so that y'all could fill places and... That's right. Maybe grab a couple extra dollars or something.
That's right. We were buying them, and we sold a lot of merch. We had shirts for the Nutra face with Super Nutra across the top, looked like a superhero. We sold a lot of merch. Merch was probably our biggest payer. As crazy as it is, back then when we were doing these shows, it was basically the same money you get nowadays playing music.
That's what they all say, man.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But we made decent money doing it. It just, man, I can tell you. That's not who I am. Yeah. I am not a cover musician. I love playing music, period, and I'm not partial to anything when it comes to performance, but my thing is original.
What do you mean not partial to anything when it comes to performance?
Well, when it comes to getting on stage, that's what it's about, is performing. So it doesn't matter if I'm playing a cover song or an original. I'm going to give you the same heart and soul into it.
Gotcha.
When it comes to the behind the scenes, hey, we're writing. I'd much rather write music than learn to play other people's music. I have just as much fun performing either, if that makes sense. So performing either doesn't bother me.
It's the same sensation.
But it's what I get out of it is the composition of the song. It's the 4 of us getting together in the garage and working out a riff and saying, hey, man, that riff sounds great. And an hour later, you've got an entire song, and a day later, you've got vocals, and you're doing holy shit. Like, there's nothing quite the same as that. There's been a ton of cover songs I've had to learn over the years that were complex and challenging, but nothing to the level of writing music and producing music and putting it out.
The creative process is something that you really enjoy.
That's my favorite.
Rundown, so you're talking about them guys now. Rundown for everybody out there who is in it and what they're playing.
So them guys consist of Nick Oob on lead vocals and rhythm and lead guitar. Benjamin Kleber, who is our new lead guitar player, but they share lead and rhythm duties. We've got John Wagispack, we call him Johnny Utah, on the bass guitar, a little backing vocals. And I'm Chet. I'm the drummer and main backing vocals, I guess you'd say, because we do a lot of backing vocals.
All right, cool. Them guys was formed following this Super Nutria?
Oh, it was quite a gap. So I left Super Nutria in 2015.
Okay.
And we formed them guys. I get a random call from Nick and John one day that they wanted to jam. We were going to do a Chevelle tribute band.
Okay.
And they want to do it, but they're only going to do it if I come. And I'd been out for like 4 years. I hadn't played anything.
Really?
Yeah, I took a little break. I'd gotten married. My kids were young, and so I took a little break. So they called me to jam. We got together. And I mean, obviously in 2019, this is 6 months to a year away from COVID.
Right.
So we get together, and I mean, in no time, we put together a 2.5, 3 hour long set.
Was it all covers at that point, or was
all
it
covers?
Okay.
So we initially based it on Chevelle, and then from there we took the styles of music that fit in with Chevelle. A little Rage Against the Machine, a little Godsmack, a little Seven Dust, and within no time we were set up for a 2-3 hour show, and we went from there. We actually got to play one show as a cover band, which was crazy. Motor Riot.
Mm-hmm.
So Motor Riot opened for us at Twist the Line back in December of 2019. That was our first show as them guys, and COVID struck 25 days later.
How convenient.
Right. So we went from, we were cramming. And back then Anthony Green was in the band with us. We brought Anthony in early on, but we went from cramming covers, trying to make sure we had as much coverage as we can to, shit, we ain't got nowhere to play.
What was the point of the cram? You trying to, because you said you already had enough to fill a 3 hour slot.
Well, and that was the trick of it. We were constantly evolving right there. We didn't know exactly what our identity was at that point. We were still early in it, so we were testing the waters. We playing some Coheed and Cambria. We playing stuff that we're testing. It's our first show. What goes over well, what doesn't. We're still cramming new songs in, learning new stuff. We never actually got to that final point of, hey, this would have been our set list had we stuck to doing this. We did that for 6 months. We crammed. We played the one show. COVID strikes less than 30 days later.
Yeah.
And we kept doing the cover stuff, kept doing it for a little while in the garage, doing live streams. And one day it's like, fuck it. Let's write music. Like, we can't go play, so what are we doing? Like, we're going to sit down in the garage and keep playing cover music?
Yeah.
Nah, fuck it, let's write. So we got together, I'm going to say 2 months after COVID struck, and we had done like 3 or 4 live streams and 5 practices. We wrote the first album. And we released the first album 2 months later with Dwayne. We went to see Dwayne at OCD.
Sure. 5 practices.
5 practices.
2 months. Got an album's worth of original music, and you're ready to put it down.
Yep.
That's so fast, man.
It is. It was. So we had a lot of conversations amongst each other, and what I can say is, everything just meshed. Like it was, we had all had enough years of experience in music and writing and recording some stuff, and it was time. It was time for something to make it to an album that nobody had anything released.
Think back to like the first few writing sessions, had people been sitting on material? Like, you didn't play for years. Were you sitting on any material?
I wasn't.
Was anybody else coming, having sit on material for a while? Because that would make sense to me. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if they were already sitting on it, they know what they like about it, and they kept it. They kept it here until that time, and they said, this got to be part of this,
So Nick, we call it his spank bank. So Nick has this spank bank of riffs. Now, some songs we put together as them guys, it's full songs. Nick will write pretty much the whole song. He'll bring it to us, and we're like, holy shit, that's great. But in the first album, it was his spank bank of riffs.
That doesn't sound like it has anything to do with music, by the way. It sounds like it has something to do with something else. Okay.
Well,
just make sure you know that.
So for the world to know, the more you know about Nick, everything in Nick's life is music. So it doesn't matter what you say, it's music. Nick had this spank bank of riffs.
Okay.
And we go into the garage, and we did 5 weeks, 5 practices in 5 weeks. We wrote 2 songs a week.
Okay.
So 2 songs a practice for 5 practices.
Okay.
And he comes in and, I want to say the first song we did might have been In the Dark or Let Me See. I think it was In the Dark. That was the first song we wrote as a band, and just came out of the blue. It was just, hey, check this riff out. And then 20 minutes later, we've got the song, we're piecing the song together. All right, well, this long for the verse. And all right, we have no vocals, we have nothing, but we're going to piece it together.
Yeah.
And we did that for 2 songs in the first practice. And then 2 days later, we had vocals recorded on both songs so we can hear them. It was a insane process. Like,
let me ask, aside from the material itself, I know what your influences were, 70s and 90s music. The song structures differed just as the music differed between those decades. What would you say you were drawing from more when you were kind of laying out together, when y'all were laying out these song structures?
Well, it's kind of a combination, I feel like. So Nick and John are both diehard Black Sabbath fans.
Okay.
And they, early Sabbath years, that's who they are. And I'm more of the 9.7 Dust, Godsmack. So I feel like we used the combination of the two, and it just meshed. I mean, like, instantly.
Okay.
It wasn't even well, let's try this kind of drum beat, or maybe we need to change this. It was immediately. We take these 2 likings and put it together, and it was like, holy fucking shit, Batman, this just happened. And I mean, obviously, when you listen to our first album, you can hear some, I call it immaturity, lack of experience. We were younger. We were early in this phase. We didn't spend a whole lot of time in perfecting it. We played the songs, but we walk in Dwayne's studio, no click tracks, no nothing. We recorded the whole album in 2-3 days. Nice. We went in on Friday, walked out Sunday with the album recorded. So it was, but you can hear the youth in us back in that album. And then when we go in for the second album, you can hear the progression through us. You can hear the experience coming through. But I honestly feel like, I'm glad you asked that question, because I feel like that is the ticket for why we stand out as a group, is that we take that 70s style structure and the guitar work and mix it with the 90s style drum work, and it just works. And it's different. It doesn't sound like anybody else, if that makes sense.
Sure. I appreciate in multiple mediums when an artist does something that kind of pays homage to the people that preceded him. Doesn't even have to be some of the greats. Maybe it's just some of the things that he thinks is great.
Right.
Because you're taking a little piece of the past with you and kind of pushing it forward in a new style, and that's what everybody is supposed to do in any creative venture.
Right.
You got to bring something to the table, and your new twist is that something. But you're starting with the basics like everybody else, and you're going to make it your own. Do you know what I'm saying? So I've always appreciated that quality, and I'm glad that it works for y'all in such a manner that you're able to do that. You're able to keep with you some of the things that you grew up loving, and so are they. But it still converges to form something that is respected. Do you know what I mean? What since you're talking about it, what do you feel is unique about them guys that people might not find elsewhere?
Well, obviously I'm partial to our music. I mean, we write it. So, I've got a laundry list of things that make me say that we're good at this, we're good at that. What I feel like what separates us from a lot of bands and from a lot of styles of music, I'll say, because we cover multiple styles. What separates us, I feel like, is the non-partial ear. I feel like if you listen to all of our music, you can tell that it is strongly driven on performance energy. So when you listen to a song, you can feel the energy of the song. And I take a lot of pride in that. When we write a song, I'll sit back and listen and say, okay, well, if I was out in the crowd, how would that make me feel if I was watching you perform this? So I think what separates us is we don't lock ourselves into a specific genre, and we also, you can feel the songs. I feel like as you're going through the songs, you can feel it. It's a very unique process. It's a very unique experience.
Yeah.
That, no two songs sound alike. Not even close. I mean, you can listen to some bands and, what was that song again? Because I know it sounded like the last one we listened to. I mean, we've got 34 originals, and you can't name me 2 of them that sound the same.
Well, it's interesting you say that, man, because, I mean, you said Chevelle. Y'all were playing a lot of Chevelle when y'all were a cover band. Chevelle does that to me. I'm going to be honest.
That's true.
I love them, don't get me wrong, but it's not a front-to-back album band.
That's
you
right.
know what I'm saying? So it's kind of funny for me to hear you say that now, that distinction, I suppose. What do you think was missing in the beginning where y'all were like searching for your sound? Y'all didn't know quite what y'all wanted to do yet?
Oh man, you got to realize in a matter of 2 months, we went from being a cover band to recording an album in the studio.
Yeah.
So, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. It was, hey, we're just giving it a shot. And, so if you look back at our first album, it's called All a Dream, and it's relative. So this is all a dream. I can't believe we're doing this shit. Like it was like, everything starts to tell a story. So the first album was all a dream because we're new to it. We don't know what the hell's going on. We don't know where we want to be, what we want to do.
Yeah.
We had zero anticipation of writing a second album or a third album. It was more of a bucket list type thing. Like, hey, fuck, we can't play. Let's record. Let's write something, record it so we can all say we did it.
Yeah.
So all of us have one of those CDs sitting on top of a case in your house, just to say you did it. And it just so happened that doing that on the first album, people liked it. It was, I'm not going to say overnight success, but it was in a very short period of time, there were some people that took a serious liking to it.
What was the plan for it?
Record it,
put it
release
out, see what happens? No real destination?
No real plan. So, obviously, for anybody that knows who we are, they know we're weekend warriors. We are not capable of hitting the road for 2-3 weeks at a time right now. But back then it was, fuck it, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And it turned into I want to say in the first week or so that the album got released on Apple Music and Spotify. Man, we went from like 1,500 followers on Facebook to like 3,000 followers in a week. And we're like,
that's cool.
Like,
it's cool when you
shit.
can see elsewhere something, why,
That's
why.
Right.
But you're watching something in real time.
It was insane. And we started, so back then, keep in mind, we released this album, we still can't perform anywhere. Right. It's COVID.
Yeah.
So we actually released both first and second album before we got to get out and perform live after COVID. But so we're doing the live streams and we're doing our new music. We're giving people teasers and samples, and then we're doing live streams and performing covers and originals. Then just originals. We're going to do 6 songs on this live stream. And we'd have 2,500, 3,000 people on at a time.
Beautiful.
And it was like, holy shit, guys, like this is working.
Yeah.
Which kind of it intrigued us to move on to the second album. And second album was a challenge, because it's no longer the honeymoon phase.
What was the Spank Bank empty at that point?
Oh, no, by no means was it empty. It's just, we've always challenged ourselves from we've written 34 songs to date or 35 songs. Okay. The challenge to us is we don't want to be that band that, the first album they release is incredible, but they can never quite follow it up. And there's quite a few bands out there that, they release an album and it's awesome. And then you come back, a perfect example is Creed to me. I love Creed. I love Creed's music. Creed's first album is their best album, hands down. They release Human Clay. All right, it's still good, but it's not My Own Prison. And then by the third album, you're doing, what the fuck is really going on here? It's...
I think that's a same song for a lot of different musicians because the first album, they could take as long as they want to put it together.
That's right.
And they're going through a lot during that time, you know what I'm saying? So it's built off of hardships in life and, real things. But then album 2 is built off of the pressures of album 1. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and I think that's where our advantage comes in is we did it opposite. We walked in on the first album and slammed it together and said, fuck, let's have a good time and do it.
Yeah.
We didn't put no pressure on us. We just walked in and did it. Second album was a little more thought out. We had Hurricane Ida come through. John had some damage on his house. It was a big challenge during the second album, but it wasn't a musical challenge. It was life was challenging in that moment.
Yeah.
But we did it opposite of most bands, and our challenge to ourselves was, let's make sure that everything we release behind each other is better. I want this product to be better than the previous product, and I feel like, honestly, I feel like we've done that. I feel like that.
See, I'm sorry to cut you off. When I think about that, I think about the plight of a perfectionist, or the plight of a creative in general. You know, that the work is never finished.
That's right.
There's always something else that you want to do to it, or you think it might need this or that, and sometimes you shoot yourself in the foot. But that's just the way people are. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it was surprising to me to hear you say that. Bam, 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 and we all were like in agreement, put it out. Like, that doesn't happen. You know what I'm saying? Most artists would be like, oh no, we can't. We have to. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
So, but just to put it out there like that, and see what happens. You know.
Well, we tested the waters when we went to see Dwayne at OCD. The funny story about that is, Nick tells us, Nick had knew Dwayne. Nick used to rehearse with Intrepid Bastards out there. So Nick tells us before we all meet Dwayne, he's like, look, so I'm just going to let you know, if you don't know Dwayne and you don't know the kind of person he is, he can come off as a little harsh. And I'm like, harsh? What? So he's telling everybody that, just kind of like, look, he's going to be adamant about what he's a professionalist. He wants everything to be perfect. He wants it to be done right. Don't take it the wrong way. And I'm like, all right, cool. We walk in the studio for the first day, and he's like, look, we're not going to record nothing tonight. Like, we're just going to get drums set up, and we're going to start fresh in the morning. Yeah, the drums were done on Friday night, the first night. We walked out the door, and he's like, dude, I never expected to do this. Well, 3 days go by, 3 afternoons go by, and Dwayne's like, holy shit. Like, you guys came in here and just hammered it.
Yeah.
Like, didn't fuck around, just came in and did what needed to be done. Everybody's sitting down working out every part. We gave Dwayne kind of free range to, tell us what you think we should do. Like, fuck, we a bunch of nobodies in this. We don't know nothing about it. And he didn't really offer to change a whole lot of what we did on the first album. He was impressed in that moment, like, man, you guys really fucking did this.
Yeah,
like,
it's indicative of satisfaction, I guess, right?
That's
Kind
right.
of wanting to change things, yeah.
And it made us happy, tickled pink. And so, funny story, to add to that, we're doing, we record the first album. Dwayne calls us. He does a SE promotion for his SE Electronics. He calls us up and he's like, man, look, I got to shoot this video, and I need somebody that can come in here and do it in less than a day. Like, we need to do it quickly. I'm like, no problem. So we went in there and recorded Giving Up off of our second album. We were ready to record, but we just went in there and recorded Giving Up. We got in there at like 2 in the afternoon, 7 o'clock that night. We're on our way home. And he's like, dude, it could not have played out better.
Nice.
Because I need to get this out as quick as I can. Nobody's coming in here and recording an entire song, start to finish, in 5 hours.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We walked in there and hammered that motherfucker out.
Yeah.
And we've got this very good respect for Dwayne, and I think he's got that same respect for us. That we worked very well together. He did incredible work for us. He really did. When we recorded the third album, by no means were we trying to move away from him. I actually talked to Ross and told Ross that I wanted them to work together. But Ross came to us and said, just give me a shot. Like, I want to get my feet wet in this. I want to do it.
Sure.
Please let me try to do this. And so we did. And we're not disappointed in his work either. He actually produced the third album, which, phenomenal work.
Yeah, good. That's good. I'll be interested to see, looking back. I mean, I'm sure I could have already, but you wouldn't be surprised to hear how many musicians talk about what COVID did for them, like in a positive light. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because it was the genesis of so many albums. We got people that never wrote originals, make a whole album of them.
That's right.
Remote work, but it caused them to, you don't want to go crazy, so you better do something, you know what I'm saying?
That's right.
So they got to work. And it's funny too, another guy, a booking agent I talked to, was pointing out that it was kind of the dividing line between those who were going to do something and those who weren't, because some of them said, well, COVID hit, shit, we're might as well get a 9 to 5. And then others said, all right, we need to double down, be ready as soon as this thing's lifted.
That's right.
Let's get our next album together while we can. Like, just kept their nose to the grindstone and came out the other end better for it. You know what I mean?
That was our advantage, I guess. And I don't call it an advantage against anybody by any means. I mean, we're all in this together. But for us, that if it wouldn't have been for COVID, I don't know if we would have ever written the first song, let alone first album.
Yeah.
COVID was a huge blessing to us, and we didn't even know it at the time. Like it never resonated to us until, you know, we're fixing to start tracking album 3, and we're doing, guys, you realize this all came from fucking COVID-19? Like, what are the odds of this? So it was a huge blessing for us. It really was.
On these albums, I mean, since y'all were heavy into covers before this original creative process started and stuff, do y'all throw in covers on each album?
So we haven't yet. First album is all original. Second album is all original. Third album is all original.
Okay.
We are working on album 4 now. We don't have an album title yet. We've got some ideas, but it's not quite there yet. But the most recent thing that we started doing is we've been covering Jelly Roll's "Son of a Sinner."
Okay.
We made a metal version of it. I call it a metal version. It's got a breakdown in it, so let's call it metal. I don't necessarily know the distinction between all of them all the time because, you know, we don't pay attention to that shit.
Sure.
But yeah, so we're doing a Jelly Roll cover now. As of late, we've been talking about doing a few covers here and there has been talks of releasing a Them Guys Undercover album.
Cool.
And it's basically a cover album of, you know, all the shit that we like to play, the shit that we grew up on, the shit that we enjoyed.
Yeah.
Because even though we're all original now, I mean, we may play a couple covers here or there. We still have 25, 30 cover songs in the bank, in the back, waiting to where when, you know, you get this right opportunity and they ask for it, you got it.
Sure.
And, you know, everything from System of a Down to Alice in Chains to, you know, you name it, it's pretty much covering everybody's bases there.
Nice.
But yeah, we do them every now and then. We do plan to have at least one cover on the next album.
Mm-hmm. And you were describing yourselves as weekend warriors, so to speak. Like the touring is not going to happen. Where have y'all played?
Oh Lord!
Since y'all formed.
So we have covered
territories.
Yeah, territory-wise, from Houston to right outside of Pensacola.
Okay.
Now the weekend warrior thing initially was, you know, with the kids and the schedules, and you know, we had to be in. You know, you working in a boat, you know that you got to be in certain places at certain times.
Yes.
What I can say is now that Anthony is not a part of the band anymore, that frees us up to where we're not limited to every other weekend. We can play just about any time.
Okay.
Now that doesn't necessarily open up touring, but it does open up the idea where, you know, we can pull a 3-4 day run, leave on a Thursday, come home on a Monday. We can do shit like
so
that.
Y'all could do festivals, which we have a lot of in this territory.
That's right.
Yeah.
But we have, you know, since we've started this, I'm going to say from, you know, we've played as far west as Houston, as far east as, you know, 30 miles out of Pensacola. Mm-hmm. And we've played quite a few venues in between. I mean, we've covered most of the big cities in there. We'll actually be in Gulfport this Saturday. We played in Houston a month ago. We've been in Mobile. We've been in Lafayette, New Iberia. We've been in Baton Rouge a ton of times. We've been in New Orleans. We've been in Denham Springs, Ponchatoula, Hammond. Most recently we did Mandeville.
Okay.
We played Choctaw Brewery this past Saturday.
Right.
I mean, so we've pretty much covered the bases along the Gulf Coast of all the major cities and quite a few of the cities in between.
Yeah. How often is this that y'all are performing? Does it? I realize it's not regularly, every week, like regular weekend. Intervals. I'm just saying, like, how often in a month would you say y'all? We
typically, well, up until, you know, letting Anthony go and hiring Ben, we were every other weekend. So Anthony had his kids every other weekend.
Gotcha.
So we could play every other weekend.
Okay.
Now we played this past Saturday at Choctaw. We'll be in Gulfport this Saturday coming for Kerry Thibodeaux with the GCMA. And then the following Saturday, we'll be in Slidell. There's a leukemia benefit.
Okay.
So we are capable of taking on multiple weekends in a row now. You know, and again, there's nothing stopping us from doing 2 or 3 nights in a weekend to do it.
Sure.
Except the fact that the bands are still paid like 1980. That kind of that changes some of it.
Yeah, we were talking about. I think I hadn't started recording yet when we were talking about that, but it's so sad. I don't know what to say about it, and I hear it all the time. It's
true.
They had recently made the news because everybody thought that the city of New Orleans was mandating a rate for musicians, but I believe it was just their policy paying their musicians for whoever they hired for whatever recitals or events that they were having. You know what I'm saying? But wouldn't that be grand if there was like a mandatory minimum wage,
right,
from musicians? You know,
everybody would get a raise. I'm pretty sure.
All right. And it doesn't sound like it, but I just want to be thorough, I suppose. Has being an original band affected your ability to book as opposed to a cover? Because obviously, cover bands, you're a different format. You're filling a bigger slot and you're an easier sell because you're playing the hits. Now, as an original band, maybe you can't fill the same size slot, I don't know, but it's a bit of a harder sell being original material. Has it changed your ability to book?
So it's actually benefited us in the long run.
Okay.
So on the front end, it was tough. You know, we made a commitment when COVID struck. We all walk in the garage and say, hey, if we want to do originals, just understand the money's going to suck. Booking's going to be tough. We're limited to where we can play. And we all committed to doing that. But as of late, over the last year and a half, I'm going to say year and a half, 2 years, I mean, we've been booking venues that rock and metal bands are not booking. You know, we've been locking up shows in, Southern Rhythm Venue in Denham Springs.
Okay.
That's a country bar. We played there 3 weeks ago. And actually had a really good turnout. It's just, now that we've got some notoriety on our belt, it's a lot easier to book. So it was hindered at first.
It was at first.
Oh yeah, at first it was tough. I mean, we'd get offers to play with some of the cover bands. Like, hey, you can come open, play 30, 40 minutes. And also early on in it, we only had one album. So 10 songs at most you cover in an hour.
That
maybe.
was still 2019. The first album was still 2019, or it was 2020?
No, so when we first started playing regularly, we were releasing the second album, but we weren't landing the slots, the longer slots.
Gotcha.
So you were limited to how many songs you can play anyway. You had to jump on whatever show you can get.
Yeah.
Today we host 95% of our own shows. So we've been fortunate where some of these venues are trusting in us as a rock and metal band to come in and bring a crowd and put on a good, presentable show for them where there's this plague on metal music in a lot of these venues, and it's crazy. Now, we can talk about Twist and Babylon and these places till we're blue in the face, and we know they love metal. But when you start talking to Southern Rhythm venues in Denham Springs, or the Basin Music Hall in Baton Rouge, the Thibodeaux Civic Center, these places don't book rock and metal at all. And they have given us the opportunity to walk in and say, hey, we're going to let you host a show. And we've done it on countless times in most of these venues, which is also helping the local scene because we're grabbing the other local bands, the Drabs, the This Beating Hearts, the Silverdose. There's so many, Green Gasoline. We played with Green Gasoline. We've played with so many of these local bands, and we were given the opportunity from these venues to let us host it and let us do it how we want to do it.
Yeah.
And every show, I mean, we always try to grab a couple different bands and, come with us and let's do this. Let's get your foot in the door just like we're getting ours.
So important, man.
Oh, it is.
There was something that came to mind for me. So I would imagine people would agree that y'all as a band, as a business, have your shit together. What is, for you, the definition of having your shit together? What were you doing to be able to book these places? What did you have an EPK, a professional EPK, or like what were you sending out there?
So on the front end, we didn't have any of that. We were so clueless as to what we were doing. Today, we have a website. We've got a digital EPK. I mean, we've got 3 albums. We've got merchandise floating everywhere. We've got our own merch site online, a merch store. There's a lot more moving parts to it nowadays. And I think our definition, and this is going to sound crazy, we're all friends, right? So we do this with the people that we care about, and that's what it's first and foremost. My definition of having our shit together as a group is we don't argue and fight. We don't bicker. We're all happy doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what comes along. It doesn't matter if it's a challenge. It doesn't matter what the situation is. we're enjoying what we're doing, we got our shit together. So many times when we felt like we were failing is when attitudes got crazy, when, you know, people started freaking out. Man, shit's just not working. Oh man, we're not playing good enough shows, or enough people didn't show up to the show. And
yeah,
you know, that's when tempers start to flare, and that's when you start feeling removed from the music. For us now, I can tell you that is our definition of success, is we're still loving every second of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And, you know, as business-like as it is, our music is not a business. Our brand is a business.
Sure.
Our music is personal.
Yeah.
And it is, we do what we do as a band because that's what we love. And, you know, some people, I've had 2 or 3 people over the course of 4 years tell me, that's kind of dickish. Like, you don't care what your fans think? And it's like, I do, but I don't. I don't write music for the fans.
You can't.
I write music based on what we like.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that that's what other people like too.
Well, I mean, you know, how many people are there in the world? Somebody's going to like the same shit, you know what I'm saying?
And
not only that, but if you start trying to play what you think they might like, then you're pandering to them, and it's not coming from you.
That's right.
It's coming from them.
Well, when you think about it, you know, when you get on stage, today we can perform a 3-hour set, all original. But when you think about that, I've got to perform this. So I've got to like it to perform it.
Yeah.
You know, and there are some special people in this world I can get on stage and they can play shit that they don't like. And I can do it for a very short period of time. Yeah. And eventually, I'm one of those I wear my heart on my sleeve kind of guy. Yeah. You're gonna see it in my face that I'm not having a good time.
Yeah, I can't hide when I'm pissed off. I'll tell you that.
And that's just, you know. And I'm the drummer. You know, I get told stuff about, you know, I'm the focal point on the stage. I'm always moving around. I'm the one that's talking most of the time. But you can tell when I'm not in a state of comfort. If I'm not happy with what's going on, I try my best to hide it, but I can't.
Yeah.
So what that should tell anybody that's seen us perform live, we are genuinely having the time of our lives every time we get on these stages. Because, I mean, we can't hide it. I can't. You're going to know if we're having
if
I'm having a bad time, you can look to the side and say, that's not good.
Yeah.
It's obvious.
Yeah.
I mean, so, you know, in 5 years of doing this shit, 4 years of, or 3.5, 4 years of constant playing, there's never been one time where somebody walked into a venue and said, I don't think these guys enjoy what they're doing. Like, it's obvious, you know, and that's our success. You know, that's what we do this shit for. We do this because we love music and we love our friends. And, you know, it came down to that with the Anthony situation. Anthony moved on to bigger and better things in his life, and he didn't want to be a part of what we're doing. He wanted to, but he didn't want to be our buddies. And we're like, well, that's not how this shit works. Yeah. Like, if I can't be your friend, you definitely can't be my guitar player.
It's like, part of it, yeah.
It's the way it
family.
Is.
Yeah.
We're a family. Yeah. And, you know, in the last month or two, we've had a lot of backlash online about that kind of shit. And, well, one thing we don't do, we're not going to do, is we're not going to go out and make, you know, a public scene of what's taking place, of what has taken place or what might take place. But what I can tell you is, if you ever look at our situation and you think for 1 second that we're not one big happy fucking family and we don't look out for each other, you have no idea what you're looking at. Yeah. I mean, look at us here tonight. We've got band members here just in support for whatever they may need to be here for. It doesn't matter. Sure. Because that's who we are. We get together and we address everything as a group. That's who we are. Yeah. I mean, but we've caught a lot of backlash recently about that, and I'd like to clear the air on just that, is that if you know us and you don't believe that we're a family, you don't know us. It's really simple. And you can go and ask the thousands of followers and fans and friends of ours from across the states, and one thing that every person will tell you about us is we are one big happy fucking family. Yeah. We adore each other. That's good. We are good friends. We do everything together, and it resonates. You know, it matters. That's why I think we mesh so well together. Sure. You know, we all get along all day, every day. It's never arguing. It's never fighting.
You got a clear head when you're together, you know?
That's right.
Yeah.
There's no stress. There's no pressure. It's get together and let's, look, whatever happens, happens. Let's do it. And it works.
So y'all have had 3 albums. Y'all have been gigging regularly. Looking ahead, is there more of that? Is there something different?
Well, we are working on album 4. The music direction has changed slightly. And I say that kind of lightly. And the reason I say it lightly is everything that we've written from the start to where we are now has been drastically different. I mean, it's obvious when you listen from album to album. It's like, holy shit.
Sure.
These guys
There's a progression, but it's with the same guys, and now you have
That's
somebody
right.
different.
But now we've got a new member.
A new influence.
And with the new member, it's a slightly different approach, but we're not actually addressing our writing style to be any different than what we were before. So Ben's not a new guy to our situation. Ben was our light man for 2.5 years prior to ever jumping into the band. And he knows who we are as a band and where we want to be. And he agrees. He's watched the progression. He's been involved in the progression. He's like, what we're doing is right. Let's keep doing it this way.
Sure.
The only thing we've changed a little bit on is we're not afraid to do a little more commercialized, a little more mainstreamish. You know, the one thing we were told, Billy McDonald with Rock and Review did a write-up on us.
Okay.
And he wrote up the third album, Delusions. And one of the statements he made was, while the album is still lacking a hit, I think it's because it's hard to select one of the 8 songs and say this is better than this or this is better than this.
Okay.
So when we started writing the fourth album, it was, you know what, let's produce a hit. We've got 28 songs. We need a hit. We need one song can change our lives.
Yeah.
And we may have that hit already. We don't know. But that was our thought, was we opened our mind a little more and said, you know, instead of being adamant to how we're going to do this, let's reach a little bit broader audience. Let's not be scared to go, you know, a little more screaming in some songs and then a little lighter. We've got our new song again, we call it the Happy Song. It's heavy. It's in drop C, but it sounds happy. And it's different. It's completely different than what we've done. And then we've got another song that most of Nick's chorus vocals is screaming, just sound like some Phil on Soundmotion type shit. It's just fucking brutal. And we decided that let's go in a different direction. Let's stay true to we're gonna progress, but also let's do our best to conform a little bit more, not completely. There's nobody pressuring us to do this. Let's conform to the more average listener, slightly.
And this is in pursuit of hopefully arriving at a hit single, or is it just?
I think that's the main goal.
Okay.
I think short term, when we started this, that was never even a thought. Now that we've got the size of the following we have, you know, I mean, we spread out across the country, and when you look at that, it's like, how do we get out to play music to these people that love us and support us and share us all the time and never get to see us because we can't tour? You need that hit single, something that can change your life, where you can, okay, I don't have to work my day job. We can go do this.
Yeah, give me a shout when that happens, buddy. I'll be your light guy since you don't have
you know what, and you know what I'm saying? Like that's the thought of it is initially we were like, look, the answer is always no. That was our motto. The answer is no.
Yeah,
we have
that's
wives
the dream,
and kids.
though, man. I hear you, bro.
But we realized quickly, but recently, that we're right there. Like, we are one song away from being more prepared than most bands in the country in what we do. I mean, we're coming in, we can play 4 nights in a row at 40-minute sets and never play the same song twice.
Yeah.
There's bands that's been around for 20 years play the same song in every set.
Yeah.
You know, for week in and week out.
That's right.
So we've got this, we've already got all the steps in place. All we're waiting on is that one hit. Now we've got a couple opportunities coming up here soon that can open some doors in front of us that otherwise probably wouldn't have opened because we're a metal band. Mm-hmm. But again, we don't forget how hard it is for that shit to really happen. Like, everybody says that social media saved the world with all this, and don't get me wrong, social media is great. However, it's still hard as fuck to make it as a musician. Like, it didn't just become this easy.
Yeah, it's an interstate full of signs.
That's right.
You got your own sign, but so does everybody else. I get it. What's the opportunities, man? You want to divulge anything right now? You want to leave that under wraps?
Oh no. So I mean, we advertised this for the last few months.
Okay.
October 25th through 28th, we're making a band trip up to Nashville. We are nominated for 3 Josie Music Awards at the Grand Ole Opry.
Congratulations.
It is Group of the Year in Rock and Metal Duo Performance. I'm sorry, not performance. Group of the Year Rock and Metal. music video of the year with our music video for Push Away on YouTube, and what's the other? Album of the year for Delusions.
Okay.
So yeah, we're one of the only bands that are nominated for multiple different categories in metal, rock and metal. But that's a huge opportunity. So the Josie Music Awards is the Grammys for independent artists, basically. Okay. If you're signed by a record label, you're not eligible to receive a Josie. Okay. So we got reached out. We reached out initially, and they reached back out to us, and they had a lot of interest. Each category had 2,000 to 3,000 entrants to get nominated, and each one has 12 to 14 to select from. So we made the top 12 or 14 out of thousands of entrants.
Yeah, that's strong, man.
One of the questions, and I don't remember if it was Nick or John asking me, he said, what are the odds that we actually win an award? And I'm like, we got nominated. What do you mean? Like, we already won. Yeah. We've never been to the Grand Ole Opry. We get to go sit down in the Grand Ole Opry and hear our name announced on the loudspeaker.
And like you said, to your credit still, with a nomination.
That's right. Yeah. So, and they'll tell you that if you look into the Josie Music Awards, being nominated is the win. Sure. Like if you win the award, now you got the trophy. Yeah. But the nomination alone puts you in this group of people that gather up for this 3-day weekend, and it's networking, to the next level. So you get to meet all these record producers and all these big time people in the heart of Nashville. Even though Nashville's country music central, Nashville is still music central. Sure. It doesn't matter where it is, as long as, or what kind of music. Music is music. And when you show up, they still do rock and metal shows in Nashville. It's not just country. Man.
That'll be a nice networking event, like you said. And like I was trying to say, to your credit, meaning like it's something worth listing.
That's right.
Being a nominee, So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Tell them where they can find everything, them guys.
Well, so to start, go on themguysofficial.com. You can find our links to Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, pretty much all there. Our merch store is linked to that as well through Landmark Tees. They've got our EPK on that website. Also, if you catch us on Facebook, Them Guys Official, you can pretty much find everything on our Facebook, from music videos to live performances to merchandise, Spotify links, Apple Music links. All 3 of our albums are out on Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music. I want to say the only thing it's not on is YouTube Music. Okay. Which I'm not sure why, but all right. I was just brought to my attention recently. But yeah, you can find our stuff everywhere. We've got a Pandora channel. We're out all over the place. It's really hard to, if you miss it, it's because you probably misspelling it. That's it. It's everywhere. You can Google us and the whole first page is us. It's right. But I would highly recommend, I like the traffic on themguysofficial.com, so check that out.
Sure. All right, man. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother.